Hi, Neves.
Hi, Mr. How
Yeah.
and how is everything?
So we will be joining in a short while. Let's wait for another 2 or 3 minutes and then we'll
Yep.
start. Yep.
Yep.
Hey Neves, how are you?
Hello, sir. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. How are things in
Things are good.
Kanpur?
Things are good in Kanpur. Just the way we left.
Are classes going on, or are they like everything is stalled?
Classes are everything. I mean, everything is online right now. So all the workshops, all classes, everything is happening online.
How is Madam and Choi doing?
Adam and Shoyi are also doing good. They are in Kolkata right now. So Shoyi is in class 12 now.
She's so big.
How's your sister?
She's fine. She just had her first kid. So she sounds like.
I still remember her playing violin. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have been briefed about this session, right? It's
Yes.
basically the first year masters and the students, and we also have I think some. There's another program from in the management department. It's called VLM, Visionary Leaders for Manufacturing. So they have a course on product design. So there would be some students from there as well. So the idea was about kind of interacting with all of you and trying to understand what happens in the design industry, and more importantly, for the students to understand where they're going to be 5 years down the line. So that's precisely what the idea was. And for the students, I just have to formally introduce you. So he's Neves Rodrigues. You already have information about him, but then Neves was the second batch of students, right?
Third.
Third batch of students.
It was the first, yeah.
You were Manak's batch.
Menak Grish.
Manak's batch. Yeah. Right. So after completing his masters from here, he went to US for another MFA in graphic design, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, he's been working there. So it's open to you, Neves.
Okay, and yeah, so let me start by presenting my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, and thank you, Satyaki sir, for inviting me to these talk series, and also thank you, Mrityunjay, for coordinating it. Like, you were very helpful and making it very easy for me. So today, what I want to talk about is like what we think we do versus what we really do, and so as I said, like I'm Neves. I lead the product design and the research team at a company called CityBlock Health in New York City. So one of the first things which I want to go into is just like ask, like, what do we think when we think of like design, or like what do we think of like a designer? What do we do? Is it a job? Is it like, do we have to draw? Do we like, is it art? Is it science? And I think all those questions come to our mind when we think of design. So what do we really do? I think in my mind, it's pretty simple. I think if we kind of really break it down to the basics, we see, we think, we tell stories, we actually create value, which is very important, and we live. And to illustrate this, what I'll do is I'll kind of walk you through two parts of the presentation. So the first part is just like my design journey, like how I started, like what went through. And then like the second part will kind of go into a bit of like smaller concepts that I just mentioned. So starting out, this was like very early. So this was before I went into engineering. So my background, so I started out as a mechanical engineer. So this is even before that. So before engineering, this is just 6 months before I started engineering. I actually didn't know that engineering was a career, or I actually didn't know that IITs existed. Like I came from like a family where there was like no one was like into career. Like my dad, mom, like they worked, but no one actually went into engineering. But then because I was good at like art, or I used to do stuff, like they thought like probably I think I should kind of go into architecture. But then I think, as you know, like I think they were taking advice from like friends, and they said, no, like probably if you want to kind of like have a better career, something similar, you can use all of its skills, is like engineering and mechanical engineering specifically. So that ended up me kind of going into engineering. So the next part of my journey was my 4 years in Goa Engineering College. So that was like a lot of like proper engineering, but then it had a lot of like design elements to it too. So a lot of machine design, like design drawings, We learned like a lot of analysis, but then it was also a lot of fun. So it was like just like engineering, just like at IIT, like we like spent a lot of time like having good fun. So that was those were some of my like very early formative years in engineering. I learned a lot, like had a lot of fun. So from there, I was one of the like first 6 in the batch to kind of really like, get into this Quest Global in Bangalore, which was an aerospace analysis company. So I specialized in finite element analysis, which was basically like analyzing components based on this method. And then because of that, we got a job at this company. We like after graduation, we moved to Bangalore, but then the recession hit. And after 6 months of training, after doing a bunch of stuff, we were like just like kept on hold and never hired. So that was interesting. After that, came back to Goa and started teaching. So here I was teaching like mechanical engineering students. I was teaching air conditioning. I was teaching like design. Actually, it was interesting. I even set the paper for one of the board exams, like the Goa University board exams. It was very funny. I just kind of graduated and I was like doing that. And then I wanted to still pursue a career in finite element, which was still my passion back then. And I applied to US and got admitted to 3 universities. But then a friend of mine who was answering seed, he said, why don't you just answer this? Like, this is an exam, like could be interesting. So I ended up going with him to Bombay and answering seed and got into IITK. So I had to decide whether I wanted to kind of go into IIT or go and pursue MS and FEA. And for some reason, I decided that I just should go to IITK. It was also interesting because actually when I came for my interview, when I met like folks like Satyagisa mentioned, Menak, Girish, Adil, like Shobik, like all of them. And then also like all the professors, like I think Mitre, Professor Mitre, like they all like interviewed us. And I think just like the feeling, there was something which I just thought, okay, I should go here. There is something that like I should do. And then the next few, like couple of years were my time at IIT Kanpur and then studying design. This was a very, very good and interesting time because I kind of learned a lot. Initially, when I started, I didn't know what it would be, but then over time kept like learning more and more on what I wanted to do. And then from there, like I kind of, basically that was my move from Goa to Kanpur. So spent a lot of time. So this is like Kanpur was interesting. It was like completely new for me. I had been to like Northern India, had been to Delhi, but it's very, very fascinating. Being in IIT, used to spend a lot of time in the adjacent village of Nankari, just used to bike there, just to take photos at different times of the day. It's like really enjoy the time there. So the time at IIT was like very, very interesting. So we did learn a lot. We did learn a lot of theory, but it was just like exploring everything and anything that we could do. Like taking classes, doing just like going on bike rides, just like learning like anything and everything we could. It was also my first access to a personal computer. Also like a first access to Girish's camera and the lab camera. So I never had, like I had seen like a camera and then used a camera before once, but then this was like access to like photography too. Used also the Mac for the first time. I was kind of fascinated. That was the first time I was using the Mac. And then like at that point, like one fun fact is like our average sleep time was 4:30 a.m. Like that was like around then we used to sleep. So it's like either 6 or 3 or 4, but 4 was an average. And then I think the interesting part about this period was learned a lot by doing. That is like learned a lot about photography. And that was basically we were outside of the building, just waiting for that bee to come. Like Girish and I were always there. Like in the people used to call, why are those two people, like guys in the like bushes all the time? Used to be like always very, very close to like plants, flowers, like always like taking photos. And that was like very, very interesting because it allowed us to kind of really learn photography, but then also to observe like what's happening. So it was kind of a very interesting period of learning, and it was kind of a blast because it was just like going and taking photos everywhere. This was also the very, very interesting part where we actually made film, like a video, the Denver video, which you probably might have seen. So we had like very, very talented singers. We had Adil as a great musician. So he composed everything. And then like with the senior batch, we put together this video. So this was like an amazing experience. It was also my first time holding a video camera, taking some of the shots for this. It was just like expressing my creativity here. So this was another like amazing experience. And then we followed it up with like another one the next year. And it was kind of interesting for us to just like explore our creativity. It was also our first access to things like 3D printing, 3D scanning, and virtual reality. I'm talking about 2005, 4 or 5. This is very, very early for 3D printing. Like 3D printing, one 3D print used to cost like 50,000 rupees, or like that was like for like an hour of 3D printing. Like this was like, it didn't exist. 3D scanning, eventually when I went like to the US and I said I did all of this, they were like, 3D printing, like that's like pretty like advanced. 3D scanning, even today, that is not such a big concept. And we could actually get access to it. We did projects, we went to the leather industry, we did projects using like 3D scanning, and also the virtual reality lab. One of the projects which I worked during the summer was collaborate with, back to the 3D. So yeah, so this was one of the projects which like was like designing a phone and like printing it 3D. So it's our like old attempt. It was also learning a 3D software. So it's like a lot of exploration. Then one of the summer projects which I worked on was collaborate with 2 computer science engineers and a computer science professor, Amitabh Mukherjee, and then a professor and archaeologist in Banaras Hindu University, Professor Vidula Jaiswal. So worked with them on this project. So there was this just mound in the middle of like this town called B3. So we went there. We were like going in jeeps to kind of look at the place. It was just like a hill. There was nothing there. The whole temple was buried. And she had done a lot of excavations and she had written books on it. And then just based on the books, based on some of the measurements we took, we started kind of visualizing it. So this was a very interesting project for us. We were kind of really recreating the temple based on not just like what she had done, but also on the surrounding temples that like existed in parts and pieces. And with the engineering students, the computer science engineering students, like they started like modeling this and then creating like this in 3D. And then we wrote a paper. Eventually went on to present presentation paper with Professor Jaiswal at the Archaeological Society in Bangalore to a bunch of archaeologists on like use of technology in archaeology. This was this was very, very early for some of these things. Then after that, like so that was a good time at IIT Kanpur. I had done like, so I came from a very engineering background. And I had done a bunch of like really deep like I had engineering skills. And at IIT Kanpur, I learned a lot about design. And I kind of moved the needle from being very analytical to like a 45 degrees of like, if you move it up, like IIT Kanpur was like a lot of exploration and technical. And what I wanted to do is kind of really move it like to the other side and just really wanted to explore the creative part of it. So I decided to pursue MFA in graphic design at SCAD. So this was me moving to the US, like doing my master's, but also like I think in the US, I also had like 2 other jobs that I did while I was pursuing my education there. Here, like at SCAD, it was kind of very, very exploratory, like doing a bunch of stuff. Learned a lot of typography, took classes in illustration, photography, ceramics, like just learned like everything. The classes that we could take were not just in the graphic design department, but all different departments. So just like really, really explored what I could do with my creativity. took like classes in the photo studios, like actually getting to use like very advanced like camera equipment. Took like fashion photo classes, like did shoots. So it's kind of very interesting, like evolution of what I did as a designer. After my 2 years at SCAD, where like I learned all of the skills, I ended up getting a internship at uh, at a Italian design studio called Mucca Design, and I decided to move to New York. Didn't have a plan, but ended up like in New York. It was a good, very good, well-known design studio. And they were doing like a lot of book covers. They were also branding and designing a lot of the well-known restaurants in New York City. And it was kind of a very good learning experience because Matteo, who was the owner and the founder, was like he was like head of like the type directors institute. He like was like a big typographer in the industry, so learned a lot. He mentioned to me that like, yeah, you come from a technical background, why don't you kind of stick to within like even the company like more like web-based products rather than like printing and branding. And at that time I really wanted to kind of really get my like get experience, get my hands dirty with like print, like really wanting to understand like what was going on. So like this was also like a good time to explore New York City. So New York City is also very inspiring. It has like a lot of things happening, kind of just like all the time, and you see things, you observe things, you take it. This was just like a nice foray into New York City. But it was 2008. The internship was unpaid. I just had like 3,000 in my bank, and the recession hit. This was an interesting time, just like a learning time too. Ended up like very luckily getting a job at a company called Co-op. It was a brand agency. Started out there. I started working on a bunch of projects. Initially, like mostly like websites and web-based products, to eventually kind of really designing like products like that were like more like applications. So like even here, like in this example, we built out like all of their search, we built out all of their mapping system, like really kind of getting to explore like all of the information architecture, like how to like build out like the workflows, like all of that started happening. Like, and then that was my learning experience here. So I stayed there for like 5.5 years, ended up building their digital team for Co-op and leading the digital team. At one point, I used to manage 3 development companies. Like one was in Canada, one was in Ukraine, one was in India, and we were like doing a lot of work, building a lot of products for our clients. After this, I moved to a company called Compass. It was a real estate startup, very small. I think it was like 25 people or 30 people. I was one of the first designers. There was like a couple of designers who were there. They had moved on, and then they wanted someone. Even before starting the job, I was like already doing design because they had no one. So Compass was my first foray into real, like a more like startup-y product company, doing a lot of work in product. Here, I spent a lot of time. So one of the things that I worked on was search, like spend like a lot of time on data products, building like valuation tools, and worked very closely with engineers, like iterating the products. So this was like my next journey, which was like went on for 4.5 years. By the time I left, the company was 2,000 people and it had 17,000 agents. It was in like 17 cities in the US. It had grown pretty big. It wanted some change. At that time, I also, like in the middle of that, I also started working with friends who, for a company called Authoria. It was an open science publishing platform, which was eventually sold to Wiley, the publisher. So here, worked with a smaller group of people, like about 6 to 8 of us, building this platform that had an editor, and it was just like, think of it as like a Google Docs, but then it was like Google Docs with superpowers. So you could actually embed like IPython scripts. You can embed data. You could embed D3. You could like add like LaTeX code in it. You could add equations. So this was mostly for researchers, and we built it out for researchers. There was like people all over the world who were using it to write papers. It was kind of very, very good and fun learning experience. We created all of these blogs for like with the publications for different labs and different journals. It was kind of very, very good and interesting learning experience. Build in like a lot of their product here, like the commenting systems. After that, also started working with another group of friends. So this was like at site where we were building a product to understand the veracity of scientific research articles. So we live in a world where there is a lot of if you think of it on the news side, there is a lot of applications that are starting to do this, which is like really understanding like, okay, what is real article versus what is fake. It's kind of really like, this is something similar, but for scientific research. So the algorithm actually takes in a bunch of articles, and then it just classifies them as supporting, disputing, contradicting, and then it gives it a score. So it kind of really classifies like scientific research. It's a tool that like researchers use to really understand like what's happening. And then at that point I joined like after like this was mostly when I was at Compass. I was doing like Authoria, and then that was kind of transitioning to site. But then I ended up starting work at Cityblock Health. That's where I work right now. So Cityblock Health is a healthcare company. It serves like underserved populations. That is like, think of it like mostly Medicaid populations. Think of it as people who are below a certain income level. The government actually pays for their medical expenses. The medical expense in the US are very, very high, and just like generally people can't afford it if you don't have insurance. And mostly the people who are very, very poor, like think of it like in India as like the people below poverty line, they don't have any like money to kind of afford healthcare. So the company actually works with insurers to kind of help out the most needy and the most vulnerable. So this was a company. So my boss and my previous boss, they were like, this was inside of Google. There was a company called Sidewalks Labs, which was thinking of the future of cities. And they decided that we want to explore the future of healthcare. At that point, the team started exploring what they could do. Eventually kind of branched out to be its own independent company. Google kind of invested into it too. And yeah, I joined in early there as one of the first designers to build the team. And today we have about 400 people and in 4 different states in the US. Yeah, so what we do at Cityblock is kind of build tools for clinicians. We build the tools for our members to kind of really help them with their healthcare. So this is the more recent exploration of like building for really like vulnerable communities, and it was like a very, very interesting experience. So this was the first part, and that was just like the design journey from where I started to where I'm at right now. For the next section, what I want to do is just kind of walk over some of the core concepts that we talked about, right? So I think when I asked you the first question about what is design or what is a designer, I think I just want us to kind of really think of what we do. And then here I say why design, or like why create. So I just want to take it one step further. So I went to Wikipedia, just kind of pulled in some of the definitions of what is art and design. There's always a conversation whether design is art or what is art, right? And these are like, I think, I also want to kind of bring create into the picture, because one of the most important things that we do is we bring something into existence, right? Whether it's a new person, place, thing, something of value. We create some value in this world. And why is this very important? Because like we are, like as humans have intrinsically, like we have intrinsically built to evolve, change, and survive, right? And as designers, we have the obligation to be at the forefront of the cycle, to really, really look forward, right? And our task is unique, and that is our vision, that is to think, and that is to like really create the future. So whatever is in the future, in the present, that is like today. So individually, if you think of it, like of what you do might seem pretty small, but if you think of humanity, right? And the whole spectrum across like our evolution in time. So if you think of like the whole of humanity, all of the designers, all of the PhDs, like really thinking, and then like apply it across like the hundreds of years, what you see is really a collective of ideas, which is like trying to see the future and evolve us as like a species to kind of like really move to like what is next. I kind of find it fascinating when I'm working with my colleagues, and when I like think about what I do, I always think that, oh, what I'm trying to do is I'm just like trying to really understand all of the things that are being said, all of the problem spaces, and like give it like and make it into a reality, right? And put it on paper, like help others see what they know they want, but they can't actually visualize it. And I think that's what we do. As I said, what we do is like we see, we think, we tell stories, we create value, and we live. To illustrate this, like some of these individual top like concepts in here a bit more, I'll take us through like a few different examples. So the first one is why is it important to create value, right? Like what do we do is like why it becomes so important. So the first example was design, and this was me doing search. This was like really trying to understand what this was my third day, and I was just kind of like trying to build, like there was no search, and working with the engineer, just like trying to really map it out on what that search would be. Even without like a UI, we were like just building like the whole product, just kind of mapping out like what the experience would be. And this was like when it was very, very small, very, very basic. It like by the time I left, it ended up having like 30 million homes from the US into the search. It kind of evolved, the look evolved, like everything evolved, but the core concepts of how it worked, how we thought about like human semantics, like how they think, like what they might want to look for, all of that remained the same. It kept on getting better and better, and probably it's been like 3 years now since I kind of moved on, and it's already like so much more better. The concept of like the transience of the UI, but the permanence of the ideas, I want to like talk about that. That like when we think of design, when we think of like products, the form usually is like keeps changing, but the ideas themselves are the ones which keep carrying forward. The next concept which I want to talk about is the stories we tell, and why these are very, very important. So a project which I'm working on right now, and I can't show a lot of like visuals, but I'll just kind of give it here, is like at City Block, do a bunch of stuff. We build like a lot of tooling. We'll build like a management, like a task management tool. We build a notification system. But this is one project that I'm working on right now that is like really understand how to deliver palliative care. So palliative care is basically end of life care. So when uh, uh, like when a member actually like has like a few years or like in like most cases 6 months to survive, they get into something called as palliative care. And our like my team working here with like clinicians, working with operators, were like really figuring out like what are like the steps, like what are the things that we need to kind of provide this type of care. So in this case, like the patient has like stage 4 colon cancer, they have about 6 months left, and then they want to get admitted to something called as hospice, which is like basically when you are about to die, you get that care. And then what needs to happen, right? And I think there is like what we did is we ran this workshop, like a service design workshop with all of the teams to kind of really understand like what are some of the steps. Like we need to find who those people are in like all of our populations. Then we need to get them to consent to be on this program. Then we need to kind of plan with them, then like figure out if they're eligible for hospice. So it's like a lot of steps that kind of go into making this happen. And then we started breaking it down into like its component parts. That is like what are the tools and technology that we need? What are like the supporting processes? What are some of the observations? Who are the users here? What are some opportunities? What are some questions that we have? And really started to tell like this story of this one problem space for palliative care. And we're doing similar things for like other disease states like ESRD, which is like end state renal disease, like doing it for multiple ones. But this, like with this example, like we really wanted to illustrate of what this story is of giving this care like end to end. That is like if we have like members and we want to provide this care, like what are all the things that we need to build, that we need to put in like processes we need to put in place, like what are the data sources that we need to identify, like who has died. So it's like a lot of like interesting things that we want to kind of capture, and this was like one place for all of that, like to visualize all of that in one place. So this project was kind of an example of a story that we usually tell, and we like the job here is for us as designers to kind of really help get people from like different teams from different places to kind of really think the same way and like really understand the problem space. And then the last thing which I want to talk about is just like live, like as we go through design, is like I think the core concept is design something that we do at a job. I think Warren Buffett like famously says like there's again the tap dancing to work is what you do should be what you live. So design should be like everything that you do, like the way you like eat, the way you kind of travel, the way you like take photos, the way you like dress, like anything and everything should be designed. Like if we embody design, like everything else just becomes a manifestation of it. To summarize it, I just wanted you to live you guys like with this quote that if you want a teacher, try a waterfall, and it's by Terence McKenna. Just wanted you to think about how you think of design. Thank you for listening. So that was my presentation part, and we'll go into the question session. Thank you.
Oh, nice to see so many things coming out of you.
Thanks, sir.
I still remember in your batch, you were you did a lot of graphic design, and you used a lot of empty space in your work, if I remember correctly. And there was one more student who was from Kolkata. Anindo, yes. And he also used to do graphic design. but his works were always like too crowded, and often, you know, the area was completely filled up while you used a lot of empty void spaces. So our analysis was is that this is what happens when you come from Goa and when you come from. It's interesting to see. In fact, just 3-4 days back, I was interacting with about the 3 people who are planning to make a film. One of them is a counselor working with the palliative care unit in Bombay. So it's an interesting concept. I mean, slightly spiritual though, but I mean, the way looking at this whole thing was that. So, but the reason why I'm telling you is because it involves 2 spaces that you are aware of. So, Banaras, I mean, traditionally, in Hinduism, it is considered that there is a place where you go and you kind of leave your body and all that. So they are taking Banaras as one of the case studies, and it's almost like they're kind of recreating the space somewhere, and so there's this person who is towards the end of his life, and so it's like playing between the two, you know.
Yep.
So anyway, so I think I'll keep it open for questions. There are.
I think one of the things which was interesting for me to work in healthcare was like started like making me think is like when we think of design, we think of like, okay, what do we like? What is the UI? We learn about a lot of UI and like a lot of about product or we're creating, but then it becomes like design becomes so much about the other things that you do. Like you learn so much about like healthcare. You learn like I think we're learning like it was kind of like when you think of user studies, you think of oh, let me do like try to understand my users. We were in actually someone's home like trying to understand how they live, and that's kind of like really nice. It's also interesting like to see like people actually, so each like UI element is like sometimes people die and that's what we actually show, and that's like as real as it can get. It's kind of very, very fascinating to kind of go through that journey. Not just like I think in like the healthcare example is also good, but then I think just thinking of like some of the other examples of like just like research. It's like trying to be in someone else's like mind and trying to like create something for them. It's kind of interesting.
I don't know. I mean, today, of course, many design schools have started this, but I've been telling this for quite some time that in order to, for the design schools also, in order to teach user experience design, it's very important perhaps to also train the students in ethnographic research methods. You know, that's something which really helps. You know, if you know the research methods used for ethnography, then it actually helps you to put yourself in the other shoes. Anyway,
I think one of the things like working at a startup has taught me, like I worked at like I think 4 startups, like this is just like the only first designer and the only designer, you end up doing everything. And you end up doing like design, you end up doing like research, like you like talk business. So like I think it's a great like learning experience where you're expected to not just like do your job but then do everything else. So you have to be on the streets, you have to like ask questions, you have to like, and that's what makes you like really like an end-to-end good designer.
Yeah, in fact, that way I often say, I mean, even for our own graduating students, I mean, once they pass out from here, of course, many of them get jobs today in corporate, well-established organizations that way. But those who join startups or design firms and all that, they're the kind of learning that takes place even after graduating for at least 2-3 years is much more as compared to what you really do when you join a well-established company that way.
Yeah, I think one of the things which a design program does really well is kind of teach you everything. It doesn't keep a limit on what you learn. And it teaches you the fundamentals, like the basics of, because I remember my time, I like took classes like we learned like about like how to define a problem. Like
Yeah.
we did like I took like I think there was like with you like film criticism and introduction to like art, like the modern art. Like it was like all like very new to me, and it was just like the space that kind of expands. Because I still remember all the films that we watched back then, and I still like really cherish all those memories. So that kind of like really builds you as a designer.
In fact, making these music videos was also fun, actually.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So, so there is Nikhilesh Tripathi who has asked a question here. Thanks for the amazing presentation. I have one genuine query. Why is everyone trying to move to US? In what aspects exactly it's better than working here in India?
Yeah. So this is thanks for asking this question, Nikhilesh. It's a very interesting question. I think when we started, there were only basically three or four institutes that offered like design courses. And in the last like 10 years, like design actually as a career has kind of really like it's kind of evolved in India. I think back, like as I said, right, even in my journey, like the only things that you did was you either became an engineer or a doctor, right? Like design itself was not even like an option. And I think it has kind of evolved, right? I think for me personally, I think it was me trying to explore a lot more aspects of design. Back in the days, and this is like very very early, we used to get like a lot of like professors and a lot of like industry experts to come and kind of really like do talks, like teach us a lot of things. And I think for me it was kind of really trying to explore typography. It was like explore like certain aspects of design that I thought like I could upskill before I could do like industry work. The second aspect of this is also, I think like being in New York also like I think, and now it's kind of changed like with all of the startups coming to India, a lot of like companies being in India. Now you can like really explore like what you could do with design. It's kind of like changed in the last like with like the culture of design in India. Uh, I think being in New York, like I think for me, gives an advantage because New York is at the like really, really forefront of all the things that are happening in design. So you can really, really explore like all of your creativity here. So that's like I would say like for me, but I think like things have been very, very different in the last like 10 years. Things have changed a lot. And I don't know if like if this was the time I would have like stayed in India and like done design in India, or I would have gone to the US. Does that answer your question?
See, it's also true that, back then in 2002, 3, 4, up to I would say 5, uh, the placement scenario in the program was not that great. In fact, design as such, as a stream, was also not very well established in the country.
No.
Who had taken the bold step to move into design, I mean, that was a bold step for them, actually. And I still remember in the first batch, placement season May, we were just kind of looking for companies. And I mean, most of the companies would not even know and forget about giving a job or something. So, yeah, I mean, at that point of time, at least for Neves, I know as a student also, he always wanted to be in the Wall Street. At least wanted to, I mean, that had. Uh, so, I mean, it's okay whether some people move to US or not, but that doesn't matter much. But yes, I mean, Neves, that answers the question to an extent.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Nevis, what would you suggest these students as? I mean, since they're currently pursuing their MDes, what do you suggest them to and how to prepare themselves. Apart from these courses and all that, that remains the same. They have to do everything. It's not like a specialized stream that we have here. So they have to practically work in films, in products, visuals, everything they have to do. But anything specific that you would like to advise them?
Yeah, so I think like in terms of preparation, I think some of the things that I really like value are my fundamentals. That is basically just like basic like core concepts of design, like how you like really solve a problem, how you define it, how you. I think those are true anywhere. I think all of the skills that you'll kind of gain, those are things that you'll kind of learn on the job, and you should be like very hungry to kind of learn and keep learning like different softwares, because things change. Like I think when we started, we used to do like design in like different softwares, like with different techniques, and things change. Like even every 2 years, like the service design didn't even used to exist like 2-3 years back. Like when like and like the courses that we took, nothing was like UX. It was just like design, right? So things actually change. You just need to be very open to change, I would say. That's very, very important, because things would keep changing. Just adapt. Like even when you work, like adapt. Like when you study, like adapt to like new things. Keep an eye on everything that's happening. You just keep learning, and I think that's what would make you very, very like a great designer.
Yeah, in the initial days of user experience design being introduced, most of the design schools, at least, they would say that, "Hey, this is basically common sense. Yeah, what is it? I mean, what's so special about it?"
Yeah.
How we really,
There is another question. To go for UMS or MDES. Yeah, so actually I was in a similar situation. Like, so the question is, Nicholas says that he was in a similar situation as you, whether to go to the MS in US or MDES. I think for me, like when I had to make that choice, it was between going into like finite element and like mechanical engineering or design. And for me, the distinction was like really understanding like what I want to do, like what I want to pursue. And design back then was like actually MDES was like very, very new. Like, do I really want to do this? Or I actually chose to go to IIT just because I had this gut feeling, because this is probably something good for me and then I should do it. So sometimes like just like go with your gut, go with your intuition, whatever makes sense. Like I think it usually works out, and that's how it has worked. And I think if you look at the path that I walked you through, right, it kind of evolved, twisted, turned. Like I'm not trying to like force myself into something. It's just like as things are happening, I'm just kind of evolving into it. Let me just keep an open mind. Things would happen, and like your career would grow. Like yeah, I think I would, at the end of the day, just like do your best work. Everything else, like where you are, like how much you make, all of that would just like follow. Like don't even think about that, because that just like keeps happening on the side if you keep like being hungry for good work. So that's my advice. Oh, I can't hear you, sir.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much. It was really wonderful seeing you.
Thank you, sir. And
You
thanks,
actually
everyone.
haven't changed a bit there, except for perhaps you've kind of put on a little bit of weight.
I don't know, probably it's been so many years, 20.
Yeah. I
20
like my photograph, huh? The one which you.
I have like printed photographs, so I'll send it to you.
Yeah. In fact, I have. I don't know. I had it. I have it actually. The photographs which were taken during our industrial tour,
Yeah.
or rather D2 to Goa, industrial D2 to Goa. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I have like some of the printed photos. I think all of the digital photos, I lost them at some point. I lost a hard drive and everything went,
No,
like
I
all
have
of my
them.
work, everything.
I have them in one of the hard drives. I'll have to check it. I'll send it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.